Happy Thursday, everybody. My name is Steve, and welcome to Rank the World, the podcast where a young white guy shares what he thinks about a variety of topics in a tier list format, because that's exactly what the world needed more of. Now, for those of you listening for the first time, this is what I like to call a homemade podcast, meaning I'm not recording in a full studio. I do use a nice XLR microphone with an audio interface, but that's about where the list of professional equipment ends. I'll do my best to minimize background noise on my end, but you know what? If a car waves hello in the middle of saying something, or a plane screams at the top of its lungs, or my neighbors start jumping up and down while I'm in the middle of saying something, I'm not going to start the whole thing over. Sound like a deal? Okay. One last thing before we begin. If you enjoy this podcast and want to see more of what I make, go check out my links at allmylinks.com/derherrsturm. That's DERHERRSTURM. That's got links to my Twitch, my YouTube, my merch store over at Redbubble, and my Twitter, where you can stay up to date with what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. It's definitely not the same sort of stuff as you can listen to here, but who knows? You may find a thing or two worth enjoying. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started with today's topic. Now, if you know me and you've been following the stuff that I've been making for a while, like for the past year or so, you'll know I'm a decent fan of a niche internet micro-celebrity, JSchlatt. However, one video of his that he did really rubbed me the wrong way. During his tenure on YouTube and the internet at large, he has sort of appointed himself the title of Big Guy, which by itself was perfectly fine until he released a video where he talked about cookies and ranked them in a tier list format. I very heavily disagreed with a lot of the stuff he said in that list. And being a big guy myself, I thought it funny that someone who declared himself the de facto big guy on the internet had such terrible takes in cookies. And something that happened as a result of this that really rubbed me the wrong way is that one day, shortly after this video of his went up, I went to Target to do a little grocery shopping. And while I was perusing the aisles looking for something to snack on, I found one of his highest recommended cookies that he covered in this tier list, Tate's cookies. I saw them in the aisle, I recognized them from the video, I thought, if Schlatt thought these were good, how bad could they possibly be? They were not good. But we'll get to my thoughts on Tate's cookies more in depth later on. Shortly after that event happened, I decided to give my own go at this tier list in a live stream. And because of how much I enjoyed doing that live stream, that was one of the biggest deciding factors when I started doing this podcast. So seeing as it is the penultimate episode of our season, I found it fitting that today we would revisit, see if I've changed my opinions on anything. So with all that being said, laid out on the table, the first cookie we are going to be talking about today is Pepperidge Farm's Farmhouse. Now, this statement that I'm about to make may change if I run into another similar type of cookie that I think does it better, but as of right now, looking at this cookie and remembering what it's like, this is one of, if not the best, softer style, like chocolate chip cookies that are on the market, at least out of the ones that we're going to be discussing today. It's soft, but not too chewy, unlike some other entries we'll be talking about in a bit. And the chocolates are pretty decent sized, not too rich, not too overpowering. And really, all in all, the Farmhouse cookies are a really healthy balance between everything that makes a sort of larger sized snack cookie so great. So I think for those reasons, we're going to be kicking off this tier list, putting Farmhouse into S tier. Next, we have Chips Ahoy Chewy, which is not the correct way to make a chewy cookie. Instead of tasting like a cookie, it ends up tasting like vaguely cookie tasting rubber. And the chocolate chips are not only tiny, but have little to no flavor to them. However, at the same time, if you're hard-pressed to find another better style of cookie, it's passable, I guess. So all things considered, Chips Ahoy Chewy just barely scrapes it out of F tier and lands into D. Chips Ahoy Chewy Reese's, on the other hand, having that added peanut butter to the entire mix, it still has a lot of the negatives for Chips Ahoy Chewy, but again, throwing that peanut butter aspect into the mix just sort of helps bring the whole experience up a little bit. So I think because of that, Chips Ahoy Chewy Reese's just barely makes it into C tier. Next we have the classic Oreo. Now this might be a controversial take, but I prefer neither the cream nor the cookie to the Oreo. What I prefer about it is the dichotomy that it makes, that blend of flavor and texture that the cream and the cookie allow for the experience. However, the quality of that experience relies on two very important factors. One, the flavor of that cream, and two, the amount of cream that is put into a single one of these cookies. Now, while the Oreo, the original Oreo, is really good with all of those factors, there are other styles of Oreo that do it better. I think that ratio of cream to cookie just barely falls short of being perfect for the original Oreo. So for those reasons, I can't in good conscience put the original Oreo any higher than A tier. Next we have Oreo Thins, which answers the problem of not having quite enough cream per Oreo cookie by doing the opposite of fixing it, C tier. On the other hand, we have Double Stuff Oreos, which achieves the perfect, I think, balance of cream to cookie, while at the same time still having all of the same great perks as the original Oreo. To me, the Double Stuff Oreo is the definitive Oreo experience. Therefore, I will be placing it alongside Farmhouse as an S tier cookie. However, at a certain point, adding more cream per Oreo cookie does have a set of diminishing returns, and we start to see that with the Mega Stuff Oreo. While not being especially overpowering, you do get that feeling when you take a bite out of a Mega Stuff Oreo that, this is a bit much. I mean, it's not bad, but it's, I don't think I would want too much more than this. So I think all things considered, the Mega Stuff Oreo is a B tier cookie. The Most Stuff Oreo, on the other hand, is too much. Too much cream in the cookie. Way too much. If I were given the option between this and an Oreo Thin, I would pick a Thin every time. D tier. Next we have, if I'm reading this correctly, is the Java Chip Oreo. Now we're going less so to the amount of the cream, more so to the flavor. I don't know whose idea it was to put coffee in an Oreo, but I do not think their idea works out as well as they think it does. B tier. Next we have the Mint Oreo, which, unlike a lot of mint-flavored takes on other like dessert-style foods like ice cream, I think mint works pretty well in the Oreo formula. Now, while I don't think it brings the overall experience of the original Oreo quite high enough to be on the same level as the Double Stuff, I think Mint Oreos are a solid A tier cookie. Next, we have Oreo Thins, which are pretty much what's good about Mint Oreos, but with a lot of the drawbacks of Oreo Thins. So while I do think they're better than original Oreo Thins, I don't think they're quite good enough to break out of C tier. Next, we have Birthday Cake Oreo. If you asked me, I would say about 10 or so years ago, where I would put birthday cake anything in terms of a tier list. First of all, I would ask you what the hell a tier list is. And then second of all, I would say, oh, it's the best. I love birthday cake. But then I grew up. Birthday cake, quite simply, is not as good as a lot of people think it is. B tier. Next, we have Keebler Fudge Stripes. Now, while the cookie and the chocolate a little bit too does taste a little stale in comparison to other cookies on this tier list, it's still pretty good. I'm not going to shy away from a fudge stripe if there are other options laid out for me. I don't think they're quite good as the base or the mint Oreo, but I also don't think they're quite as bad as Java Chip or birthday cake or mega stuff. All things considered, it just barely scrapes it into A tier. Vienna Fingers, on the other hand, I would classify as a lot more boring than the fudge stripes. B tier. Next, we have L Fudge by Keebler, which are pretty much Vienna Fingers, but just slightly better, but not better enough to make it out of B tier. Next, we have Keebler's Chips Deluxe. The only thing for me keeping these M&M Chips Deluxe cookies out of S tier is the fact that they are too small and the M&Ms are too big. And because of that, you get a fewer amount of these M&Ms per cookie. As a concept, I think M&M style cookies are very hard to beat, but Keebler's Chips Deluxe are not the greatest execution of this concept. So I think all things considered, Keebler's Chips Deluxe just barely scrapes it into A tier. Their normal non-M&M's Chips Deluxe, on the other hand, don't get the same sort of perks that the M&M's cookie concept gets. So I think for those reasons, it lands into B tier. Next, we have Keebler's Sandies, which has to be one of probably the top 5 most boring cookies ever conceived. I think it's very telling that not a whole lot of Keebler's competitors do something like a Sandy. And I don't know, they're dry, they don't have a whole lot of flavor to them. D tier. Next, we have the Vanilla Wafer, which is really good if you've been locked in the same room for 40 years with just the diet of saltine crackers. They're dry, they're boring, they're F tier. Next, we have the Nutter Butter, which is pretty much the same in concept as a Vienna Finger or an EL Fudge, but with peanut butter instead of chocolate or whatever's inside a Vienna Finger. I think out of all 3 of these types of cookie, the Nutter Butter does it the best, and because of that, scrapes it out of B tier and into A. Next, we're going to be shifting focus back over to the Oreo with the Golden Oreo. I hear a lot of people say that Golden Oreos and that style of Oreo is better than the original, and I think those people are wrong. C tier. Lemon Oreo, on the other hand, is pretty much a Golden Oreo, but the flavor combination with the cream and the cookie simply works better. And I think because of that, it doesn't share the same fate as the Golden Oreo in C tier, but instead makes it into B. Next, we have the Black and White cookie. You know, the classic Seinfeld cookie that he talked about on and on and on, how you've got to bite it a certain way, and it's got that perfect ratio, and, you know, these cookies were featured on Seinfeld for a good reason. They are absolutely delicious. The cream on them isn't too crunchy, but isn't too soft at the same time. Same with the base cookie itself. I don't know. I am a huge fan of this style of cookie, and because of that, it's a solid S tier pick. Next, we have Chips Ahoy Candy, I think it is. I would say it is a good answer to Keebler's Chips Deluxe M&Ms if it actually had M&Ms in it. The best part of the M&M is the fact that beneath that candied shell, there's chocolate. There is none of that chocolate in these Chips Ahoy candies. It's just the outer shell. And the outer shell is the worst part of that ratio. Chips Ahoy candies, C tier for candies. Next, we have Chunky Chips Ahoy. I would say that this is a really good answer to Keebler's Chips Deluxe if the actual chocolate wasn't as bland as it is. So I think while in terms of like the cookie itself, not the chocolate, it is better than Keebler's Chips Deluxe, I think just the lower quality of chocolate brings it down all the way to C tier. Regular Chips Ahoy, on the other hand, is better than a lot of the other offerings from Keebler, and I think it's because of, although it may have the same sort of quality of chocolate as the chunky Chips Ahoy, because it's smaller, you get it in sort of smaller doses. And I think it works to that cookie's advantage. So while I don't think they're quite good enough to make it into A tier, I think it's still better than a lot of the other offerings in B tier. So you know what the heck. Regular Chips Ahoy are an A tier cookie. Stella D'oro Swiss Fudge, on the other hand, are absolutely delicious. The placement of the chocolate in each of the cookie, the size, the quality of the cookie underneath the chocolate. The only way to make this formula specifically better is to add like some fruit into that center as well. But still, even just with the chocolate, Stella D'oro Swiss Fudge is a no-brainer for S tier. Stella D'oro Marguerite, on the other hand, while still being really good and really high quality, it's missing a flavor to go with the style of cookie that it is. So while I don't think it's quite good enough to break it out into S tier, it's still a very solid A tier cookie. Next, we have Ginger Snaps, which are really good if you're in the mood for ginger snaps. But in comparison to a lot of other cookies on this list, their quality is too variable. How heavy the ginger snap flavor is can range from being weak to way too strong. I think this is simply too inconsistent a style of cookie to land any higher than C tier. Next, we have Famous Amos, which to me feels like a Chips Ahoy Chewy done a lot more right. Solid B tier cookie. Next, we have Grandma's Mini Sandwich Creams, which if you ask me is pretty much an Oreo that misses the point of being an Oreo. And not only being an Oreo that misses the point of being an Oreo, but being a golden Oreo that misses that point. D tier. Next, we have Grandma's Chocolate Chip Cookie. Now, what I'm about to say for Grandma's chocolate chip cookies can be applied to every other Grandma's cookie, the three others that we're going to be talking about today. I don't get the appeal behind this brand of cookie. I've had it a few times, and every single time it has either been so dry that it disintegrates within the first bite, or so soft and chewy that it is like a Chips Ahoy Chewy, but way worse. Not to mention, the quality of the chocolate inside it does not help to bolster the quality of this cookie really at all. So I think for those reasons, I cannot in good conscience put Grandma's any higher than D tier. Similar story for chocolate brownie, peanut butter, and oatmeal raisin. Can't really put any of them higher than D tier. But I will say something about oatmeal raisin. When it's done right, I like oatmeal raisin cookies. Grandma's does not do them correctly. There is little to no texture in the cookie itself, while still having all of the same problems as the rest of Grandma's cookies. F tier. Next, we have Lenny and Larry's. I don't have much to say about this cookie other than it's alright, I guess. C tier. Next, we have Pillsbury Snowman. I positively adore this style of sugar cookie, especially with how it's dense but not hard to bite into. I think it is very hard for a lot of these different cookie manufacturers to get that sort of blend right, but Pillsbury Snowmen do it well. At the same time, while it doesn't really have any frosting or any super substantial topping to it, what it does have doesn't especially detract from the overall experience. So I think all things considered, Pillsbury Snowmen are an S tier cookie. Next, we have Lotus Biscoff, which I think in terms of the quality of just the base cookie, it's really hard to beat. But I think the lack of any super discerning, contrasting taste to it keeps it out of being S tier. So I think unfortunately I will have to put Biscoffs into A tier. Next we have Fig Newtons, which are really good if it has a certain fruit flavor inside of it, whether that be blueberry or strawberry or raspberry. When it has an additional flavor like that in the center to like that sort of jam center, but it's not really jam, it's a lot more viscous than jam. I don't know what to call it, that filling that it has. If it's like a really nice contrasting flavor like a strawberry or blueberry, it's decent. But this is not the kind of Fig Newton we're talking about today. We are talking about the base, normal Fig Newton. I don't like that taste very much. Therefore, I am left with no other choice but to put Fig Newtons into F tier. Next, we have Milano Milk Chocolate. I think these cookies are unlike any that we've talked about so far or will for the rest of today's episode. And I think that's actually a really good thing. The cookie itself is light, has a nice flavor to it, but isn't super overbearing. The filling in between the two parts of the cookie, again, isn't too overbearing. It has a nice amount to it. Really, it's hard to think of anything really wrong with this cookie. But I think just the flavor of milk chocolate isn't enough to break it into S, so I can't in good conscience put Milano Milk Chocolate any higher than A tier. Dark chocolate, on the other hand, although it is very hard to get dark chocolate right, especially in a cookie, I think Milano does it better than any other I've had. So for those reasons, Milano Dark Chocolate goes past milk chocolate and gets into S tier, along with its mint chocolate cousin. So both dark chocolate and mint chocolate Milano make it into S tier. Chessman, on the other hand, is Pepperidge Farm's most boring cookie. Although its quality is very nice, it's just simply a butter cookie, and that formula can only get you so far. Therefore, I can't in good conscience put Chessman any higher than B tier. Next, we have the base sugar cookie. You know this kind of cookie. You get it in the clear plastic tins at Target or at your local store. Everyone raves about how good these cookies are, how good the frosting is, how it's the best sugar cookie, how it's the best cookie on the planet. I think all those people are wrong. The cookie itself crumbles, disintegrates under even the first bite. The frosting is too much and overbearing. And apart from just being sugar, there is no flavor to these cookies whatsoever. I absolutely despise these cookies. F tier. On the other hand, we have Royal Dansk, the Danish butter cookies. You remember this one, the kind of cookie tin you have at your grandma's house, but you open it up and it's just full of sewing materials or yarn instead. These cookies are the best way to do, like, base, boring, in air quotes, sugar cookies. No, not sugar cookies, like the buttery cookies. They're like Chessmen, but way, way better. So I think for those reasons, they are a shoo-in for A tier. And then finally, we have Tate's, the cookie that started it all, the cookie that is the reason why we're even discussing this in the first place. I'll be honest, I'll be frank, I really tried to like these cookies, but I just can't. They are probably the thinnest cookie, even more so than Oreo Thins. The cookie itself tastes almost burnt. They are way too hard. and brittle. And the chocolate, although decent, I don't think is good enough to bring Tate's any higher than C tier. So, in summary, in F tier we have Nilla wafers, Grandma's oatmeal raisin, Fig Newtons, and the Target sugar cookie. In D tier we have Chips Ahoy Chewy, Most Stuff Oreos, Pecan Sandies, Grandma's mini sandwich creams, Grandma's chocolate chip, Grandma's chocolate brownie, and Grandma's peanut butter. In C tier we have Chips Ahoy Reese's, Oreo Thins Mint, Golden Oreos, Candy Chips Ahoy, Double Stuffed Chocolate Chip, Ginger Snaps, Lenny and Larry's Complete Cookie, and Tate's. In B, we have Chessmen, Oreo Mega Stuff, Java Chip Oreo, Birthday Cake Oreo, El Fudge, Vienna Fingers, Chips Deluxe, Lemon Oreo, and Famous Amos. In A tier, we have Milano, Stella D'Oro Marguerite, the Classic Oreo, Mint Oreo, Fudge Stripes, Chips Deluxe M&Ms, Nutter Butters, Chips Ahoy, Biscoff, and Danish Butter Cookies. And in S tier, we have Farmhouse, Double Stuffed Oreos, the Black and White Seinfeld Cookie, Stella D'Oro Swiss Fudge, Snowmen, Milano Dark Chocolate, and Milano Mint Chocolate. And that's about it for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, feel free to follow the podcast on your platform of choice, including Spotify, YouTube, Pocket Casts, and Anchor. And let me know what you thought of my rankings in the comments. Who knows, maybe I was wrong. I'll be back next week with another new topic, but until then, you all have yourselves a damn good one.